Hi, this is Jared Decker with StatSlice, and in this video we'll be doing a demo as well as an overview of Roambi. For those of you that aren't familiar, Roambi is a BI and analytics software that is targeted at the mobile device market. At this time, that includes the iPhone and iPad devices. Roambi also includes an analytics platform. There is a server-side software which allows you to upload data in the format of Excel files or other file formats. From there is an API, or there's a web-based interface to interact with that server-based data now that it's been uploaded. And we then interact through a publishing environment, which is also web-based, to distribute views of information to our mobile users' devices, where they then effectively have analytics on the go. We can also take those Roambi visualizations and embed them into mixed media style documents where we might include an interactive Roambi visualization alongside text or video, etc. And in the last month or two, Roambi has released a software as a service offering or cloud-based service, which allows businesses to get started with Roambi without having to invest in extensive initial licensing for a server or hardware, and they can effectively scale up their usage on a subscription-based pricing model. The parent company behind Roambi is MeLLmo, based in San Diego and founded in 2008. And an interesting statistic is that 8 of the top 10 pharmaceutical or biotech companies are users of Roambi. What makes Roambi different from the other tools on the market? As I've already pointed out, Roambi is laser focused on mobile users and what their needs might be. This also means that the Roambi designers have spent the time to figure out how to fully leverage the capabilities of a mobile device, gestures and things like that, and we'll take a closer look at that. Also, they've spent the time in terms of figuring out how do we create an attractive, intuitive, and even, let's call it a fun interface, and I think you'll get a feel for that when we open up the demo. Another point of distinction is that the user interface is a very controlled environment. What this means is that you as a developer or the author of the dashboards that you'll be distributing have plenty of flexibility when it comes to putting together data sets, which KPIs do you want to display, which hierarchies, things like that. And you can also choose different types of views that are available with Roambi. You can customize those views. What chart type do I want to use for this particular data set? Things like that. You can change colors. But a lot of the UI design aspects are really locked down, and that's by design. The goal, of course, is to provide your end users with an intuitive and consistently quality user interface. Roambi is also very simple and accessible, so from a publisher's standpoint or author's standpoint, it's very quick to get started. You can actually upload a data set within less than a minute, depending on the size. From there, you can publish a set of Roambi views. It all happens very quickly. We'll actually walk through a demo. And from the user's perspective, Roambi is unique because we're going to be downloading packaged views. And what this means is that if we go offline, if we're on a flight or something like that, well, the data and the visualizations are still on the device. We can still interact with our data. So I mentioned that Roambi is very targeted at the user experience for mobile devices. So I have some specific examples of that. Think of the gestures that are available on a mobile device, something as simple as a swipe. We can use that in the case of Roambi to change measures, and we'll look at a view of that in just a moment here. Something like a tap or a double tap, if we're looking at a chart and we tap that chart, we can actually see a table of figures showing us what the specific data points are that make up that area chart or that bar chart. Also, in the case of a column of figures, we might want to have more of a visual layout. So if we double tap that column, it will turn into a set of data bars alongside the numbers, and we'll even get color coding to show positive and negative values. If we take the device and rotate it from portrait mode to landscape mode, depending on the type of chart we're looking at, we're going to see certain things happen. And the point here is to zoom in and optimize the viewing experience depending on how you're holding the device. With a pinch or a reverse pinch, the typical scenario would be to zoom in on a map or on a web page. In the case of Roambi, if we're looking at something like a multi-level hierarchy, like a geography hierarchy where we have countries and underneath the countries we have cities, this will actually cause a drill down into the hierarchy. Another example of what a pinch or reverse pinch would cause is if we're looking at something like an area chart and we want to get specific data points to be highlighted, we can put both fingers on the device and move them around, and we'll get corresponding indicators telling us what the specific values are, as well as the delta between those two data points. Let's take a look at the different types of views that are available with Roambi and go through a user perspective of the demo. As I mentioned, Roambi supports a number of different predefined view types, and the way to think of this is, depending on the type of business activity, you would choose a particular view type that would do a good job of supporting that activity with analytics. So in this case, for example, let's start with, okay, we're building a scorecard. We're going to compare across two or more stores using a consistent set of key performance indicators. Let's see what the Cardex looks like on Roambi. So here's my iPad that I'm sharing. I'm going to click the Roambi application. By the way, I'm going to show you something that could be done at any time. I'm going to click the Connect option up top, and I get the list of services or cloud-based repositories that are accessible to me based on my security. I'm going to go into the StatSlice systems repository, and in this case there's nothing new that has been published, so I don't see any updated highlighting occurring in my list. But if there were something that had just been published, I would have some text standing out in a bright color indicating that there's a new version, or I would see that down below as a new document. In this case, let's just go straight into the Cardex view. And I'm going to clear these out. What I have on the left is a browsable, just like it sounds, a card catalog style interface. I'm grouping these, what end up being retail outlets, by geography region. So I have my international outlets. If I continue to scroll, I have West, etc. But what I'm going to do is take a couple of these outlets and compare them. So I drag their card off to the right. I can do up to 4 of these. I'm going to choose, let's say, these two. And at a glance, I can get some meaningful information. I have up top, these bar charts represent category breakouts of my sales. So, for example, I can see that my laptops tend to be higher in my Bartow outlet than they do in my Del Rey. The difference is less obvious when it comes to my electronics. But let's actually zoom in here. By tapping one of the cards, we'll actually get a detailed breakout of this information. Notice the lock indicator. What this means is that as I scroll vertically, the information is synchronized. Okay, and what I'm interested in this case is the number of customers. So I have my bars representing this year's customer counts and the line indicating the prior year. So I have a year-over-year comparison for the outlet on which I'm focusing, and I can scroll this scroll icon to focus on any one of these bars, and I get a detailed visualization of the numbers. Now, the most important thing here is that notice that as I scroll, both sides are coordinated. And I can see, for example, that not only was there a positive variance between Bartow and Del Rey, meaning Bartow was higher, but I can get the exact percentage. It was 37%. It's also color-coded to really highlight the fact that these were positive or negative variances. So let's go ahead and scroll down a little bit more and point out that we have other types of information that we've included. This was all decided at the time of designing this particular Roambi dashboard and publishing it. By double tapping the wood surface, I'm back at the Cardex view. What about looking up items in a list? So there's two views that do a great job of this, the catalyst and the super list. I'm going to show one of those, the super list. As you would expect with a list, we have a list of things, in this case companies, and so off to the right on the columns I have key performance indicators or measures, and I can scroll horizontally to swap these out and very quickly focus in on the particular measures that I'm interested in. For any one of these, I might want to really highlight the variances, so I can tap or double tap to convert this display into a value plus data bars layout. So what you're seeing now is the color-coded positive, negative, relative value bars alongside the values. So let me go ahead and get back to my display. As you would expect with a list, we might want to sort. So down below we have some additional options like filtering and sorting. So I'm going to select the sort option. This is a pretty consistent thing in Roambi where you actually have an interface that's easy to use. Notice that the sort option expanded and it's really easy to work with. I'm going to sort by profits, and we'll choose descending, so I'll click done. So now if I were to go up to the top, I have my companies ordered by profit. Okay, so what about ad hoc analysis? Well, a lot of different view types will work for this, but I have a couple in particular that I think work really well, and my favorite Roambi view type is the pulse. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. With the pulse view, in the upper right hand corner, I'm going to get a bar layout along with a comparison which will be rendered as a line. In this case, I'm analyzing my sales versus my target sales, and I have the label of which category of data I'm looking at. This corresponds, in this case, to drug classes, which are also displayed down below as a list. There are some visual indicators to go along with that list. Also, in this case, I'm showing my sales versus my sales target, but I can scroll through this list and notice how quickly everything updates as I try to focus on the one that's most important. Okay, so once I've found a particular drug class that I'd like to analyze, let's look at some of the things we can do with the pulse view. We have a scroller here, which defaults to the last member in the series, and as I move with my finger this scrolling button, I get data that's highlighted off to the left, and so I can see, for example, the specific sales target. I also see the variance, and these are color-coded, as you can see. I'm getting a yellow versus, in some cases, I'm getting red or green. And this is configured at the time of putting the dashboard together in the publishing environment. And we can also switch out which metrics we're analyzing right here. We have a list. This can be quite long if we want it to be. We've only got 3 in this case. So now we're looking at new scripts written versus total scripts written. And again, we can scroll through these and find any data point of interest. So that's a pulse view. Let's take a look at a layers view. A layers view is a lot like the super list in that we have a simple dimension that we can scroll through vertically, and then on the columns we have as many measures as we want to include, or key performance indicators. Now the difference is that we can also select a particular type of chart that we want to display. These will be displayed as microcharts. So in the case of bars, very small bars, this represents an entire year's worth of data. We might want to focus in and understand what those points were exactly. So if I tap, I get a specific table that gives me those data points. Other types of indicators that I'm seeing here, I have some basically alerts or flags that are occurring with color coding. So I have a positive versus a negative variance, and those are coded up according to the rules that we set when we publish. We also have these button style indicators. Here's a target versus actual indicator, just a straight number. In this case, we have a line representing the returns and the bars representing the units sold. For any one of these, I can double tap. There's a slight delay in terms of reflecting the iPad to my PC, so that's what you're seeing there. What I have now is a detail card view, and just as you saw in other examples, I can scroll vertically, and for many of the types of charts that are displayed, I can use these sliders to get additional information for any one of the data points. But notice that we have multiple layouts, multiple types of information that are displayed, whether it's a simple table or bar chart or comparison data bars. So good example there of being able to optimize the interface. Let me go ahead and close down this detail view and point out how we would do a drill down. So this is a geographical hierarchy. I'm interested in going from the country level to the city level, so I can do a reverse pinch on the left is where I've done this. And notice that we've now gone to where we can see the cities underneath the countries. I'm going to go one step further and drill that down to a product level. So now I can see, for example, how many notebooks were sold in Bilbao, Spain. So getting back up the hierarchy is as simple as reverse pinch. Let's take a quick look at a pie view as well to finish this off with the ad hoc analysis. The pie view is very much what you would expect. The focal point is this large pie chart. There we go. It's taking a minute to refresh on my screen. So the difference, though, is with Roambi is that I can use my finger and scroll through the segments of the pie. And as I do that, on the right-hand side, I'll get any number of detail breakout views that I've defined at the time of putting this view together. So it makes it a more interactive experience than we would typically expect when we're working with a pie chart. If we're analyzing trend information, there's a great view called the Trends view, and let's take a look at that. I'll just refresh on the screen. Okay, with the trend view, the focal point is a large area chart. I'm currently looking at the day level of information. This can be switched, so I'm going to change this to the week level by tapping on the W indicator. And what we have on the left is a scrollable list of categories that we can analyze within the context of this area chart. And these are further categorized by a hierarchy. So I have, for example, sales by product line. Along with each product line, I have a high-level indicator with color coding showing me the sales percent. Down below, I have sales by region, so I have basically different breakouts that I can select from. And let's say that we're interested in our electronics. So I click, and I get my, of course, re-rendering of my area chart. Notice this bar here. What this is as you've seen in other Roambi views, it's something that we can interact with. So I'm now using my finger to scroll horizontally on this area chart, and notice that we get specific call-outs telling us what the data point is at that corresponding location. But more importantly, I can use two fingers and I can actually analyze very specific information in the chart. So now I'm looking at, well, what was the overall drop-off when our sales was at one of our highest points of the year and went to one of our lowest points? It looks like that was a negative 30% drop-off in our sales volume. So that's a very interesting way to work with your area chart. Down below, we have a pan and zoom option. So let's go ahead and change this to a day level of detail, which will have a lot more volatility. And And let's now focus in on a specific area. So let's say I'm interested in understanding what happened here. I can use these sliders at the bottom to focus in on that specific data point or set of data points. So that's what you're seeing here. Okay, now what about the thing I haven't talked about yet, which is the trend line? Of course, this is called a trend view. This trend line is set up so where you can actually change the type of curve that you're using or the type of function to fit the data. So I have currently the default option has been selected, which is best fit, but I can change this to an exponential or any number of functions that are available to fit that data to the best possible curve. Okay, and there's one other view that I will have you take the time, if you are willing to look at it. It's very interesting. It's called the squares view. It allows us to browse categories in a very innovative way. So I'd recommend that you go to Roambi's website. There's this short video that's only a few seconds, but it gives you a feel for how the squares view works. Now that we've looked at the user's perspective of working with Roambi, let's take a look at the IT person's perspective, or the perspective of someone that would be publishing dashboards out to a user group. We have, as you've already seen, different types of views that we can select from. Within those views, some of them support what are called cards, and again, a card is a detailed breakout of the data, which is generally configurable to include various chart types. And I have here basically a quick list of the different chart types. These are the ones that you would expect, such as a line, a combo chart, bar end line, we have stack bars, area, etc. So these are the basic chart types that everybody would be familiar with, and we combine the two, the views or cards and the chart types, to create a Roambi. And I wanted to go ahead and give you a demo of what it's like on the back side to publish a Roambi document, everything from uploading the data to pushing out the Roambi. I'm currently logged into Roambi Business, which again is the new cloud offering. I'm logged into my account, and I'm going to create analytics. Now, where this brings me is to a user repository where I have a list of all the documents that have been created up until this point, and I'm going to add a new one. By the way, I can edit from here, of course, if I want. But let's create a pulse view, and I can either pull data from my online repository or I can pull it from my computer, which I'm going to go ahead and do. So I'll click Pulse, Open, and while that's uploading, it only takes a few seconds. Let me show you the data set. I have basically 3 attributes and a bunch of measures across the top here. My attributes are drug category, drug class, and a time attribute. The rest of these are just sales, scripts written, percentages, things like that. That's been completed, and wanted to show you that I can go into a mapper component, and using this web-based interface, I can change some of the assumptions that were made at the time of uploading the document by the Roambi system. So if I need to redefine any ranges, I can do that using the drag and drop interface. If I need to define new ranges, I can also do that. But let's go ahead and leave this as is because it has been done correctly. And let's complete the import now. Now that that data has been imported, I'm going to edit my new Pulse Roambi, and I have a couple of things that are already laid out for me. Number one, Roambi has made a guess at what I should put across the x-axis, which is the time attribute. If I were to look back at my spreadsheet, I would see that I actually have an attribute called time. And I have a filter dimension, which has also been determined in advance for me, just based on a guess of looking at the data. The fact that there were 2 attributes, one of them was selected as the filter. So I have my drug class. I can make changes here if I want and use the drug category. Down below in my scrollable list, I have the drug category. Again, I could swap these 2 out if I wanted to. For the comparisons, and this is what would cause the data to be highlighted yellow, red, green, if you wanted to color code it. This is what causes the bars to appear next to the line. I've got sales versus sales target. Now this is something that the Roambi system interpreted as a likely category of comparisons, the sales versus the sales target. That was just based on the naming convention of the columns. I can add additional comparisons by just clicking over here, or I can modify the one that was already made. If I click the plus sign, I have different types of comparisons that can be done, whether I'm comparing to the metric itself or I'm comparing to another target metric. I can make those selections here. If I'm comparing two measures, I have the option of selecting what they are. Other options available to me would include how do I want to color code the information, if that's even relevant. Let's click cancel here. So these are the basic things that you would do to configure your dashboard. In this case, there were some additional configurations that we didn't play around with that would normally go into some of the views, including card detail views. But let's just stick with something simple for now. I'll click publish once this finishes. Okay, so we'll click publish here. And we'll give it a name. I have some security options, other metadata options I can apply, but I'm just going to go ahead and publish this as is. Okay, now that that's finished, let me go back over to the iPad and we'll log back into the online repository and refresh. And here's my new testing document. Once I click or tap, I am now downloading the document and it's available for me to analyze offline. So this should now appear for me as a pulse view. And there you go. This concludes our presentation. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me. I have my email listed here, jdecker@statslice.com. Also, feel free to visit our website. We have additional information about Roambi, and feel free to sign up for our newsletter or send us an email. Also, I would recommend that you visit Roambi's website, www.roambi.com. You'll find very short videos that give you a feel for the different view types, some of which I have not covered in today's demonstration. You'll also find downloadable case studies, and you can sign up for a free trial version.